Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, salam, wherever you're watching us from. Please do let us know in the chat where you're sitting in the world, where you're watching us from. I'm based in France, so bonjour everyone. My name is Katarzyna, I'm a member of the MACFEST team. And our presenters for today will be joining us from Chicago. So before I read the short bios, I just wanted to encourage everybody to share your thoughts, your comments, any questions you might have during the event. Our presenters will answer your questions towards the end of the event. And on behalf of MACFEST, thank you for all your generous donations. All big and small make a difference and help us create all these wonderful, exciting events for you. And most of them are free. And please subscribe to our newsletter. Stay in touch with us because we've got loads of wonderful events coming up next year. And do tag us in your posts. Use our hashtag spreadhoney, not hate. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and TikTok. Okay, so let me now read short bios of the two wonderful ladies joining us today. Dr. Leah Markey is the director of the Center of Renaissance Studies at the Newberry Library in Chicago. Her research examines cross-cultural exchange between Italy and the Americas in the 16th and 17th century, collecting history and early modern prints and drawings. She's a very successful publisher. I can see loads of titles here in her bio. I'm not going to read them all, but I would keep my question towards the end that she could tell us a little bit more about her work and her publications. And then the other lady is Dr. Suzanne Karr Schmidt, and she's the George Amos Paul III Curator of the Rare Books and Manuscripts in Chicago's Newberry Library, and was previously a curator in prints and drawings at the Art Institute of Chicago. She's also a historian and also a publisher, and both ladies back in 2011 have co-curated together an exhibition under the title Altered and Adorned, Using Renaissance Prints in Daily Life. So over to you, ladies.
Thank you so much for hosting us. We're really honored to be here and are excited to show you a little bit about our collection. I think what we'll do first is introduce you briefly to the Newberry. I'll do a quick PowerPoint presentation just to explain a little bit about what this library is. And then we will use our handy camera to actually show you some rare books here in the collection.
Which you're absolutely welcome to come see if you're in Chicago.
And we'll hold questions for the end.
Oh, and we should also say that neither of us are experts in the field of a number of the things that we're showing you today. While we know a good deal about how they may have been made, we do not. We would love input on some of their importance.
Yeah, exactly. This is an important opportunity for us to share this part of the collection that's not as well known. So, okay. So here is a view of the Newberry Library. We're located right in downtown Chicago in the Gold Coast neighborhood, and this beautiful neo-Romanesque building from the 1890s. And so we'll just, as I mentioned, we'll briefly introduce you to the library exhibitions and our research center, and then we'll do the collection presentation and have questions at the end. So the library was founded back in 1887 by a bequest of the Chicago real estate tycoon Walter L. Newberry, who actually didn't have much of a collection of his own, but decided there should be a library here in Chicago. Buildings from 1893 by Henry Ives Combe. And we are open to the public, free of charge, but we're a non-circulating library, so which means you can't take materials out. You have to come and look at them in person. We have a great catalog available online, and we use this Aeon system, and you can look at books immediately upon your arrival. We're open between Tuesday and Saturday, 10 to 4. You can use cameras to take photos. And we also have a photo duplication service available on site if you want more photos, more professional photography of our collection. Our collection strengths mostly encompass medieval and early modern European manuscripts and printed books. We have an incredible collection of maps and the history of cartography, which rivals the British Library. A great collection of the history of print and book arts. We also specialize in Midwest and regional Chicago history, genealogy, indigenous and American Indian studies, and colonial history and travel. You'll notice that Islamic studies are really not a huge part of our collection, but we are in the process of learning more about it and finding and making discoveries all the time about what's here. So we have 1.6 million books, 5 million pages of manuscripts, and 600,000 maps. Just gives you a sense of our enormous collection. And then major strengths in general, this is a little bit of a repetition, but within medieval, Renaissance, and early modern studies, which is our specialty as scholars and our main interests, we have an incredible collection devoted to colonization, humanism and education, maps, as I already mentioned, music and dance, printing and book arts, religion, and then really strong collection in women's history from this period. A few items we won't show you today include this incredibly illustrated edition of Dante, which is a rare book because it's printed on vellum, which is animal skin. It's not paper. It's combining a type of book, a manuscript with a printed book from 1502. So it's an early printed book on vellum with illuminated manuscripts. It's incredibly exquisite. We also have this incredibly rare map of Mexico City known as Tenochtitlan. We have one of 2 editions that is colored from the 16th century. And you can see it's actually a large format. It folds out of a book, and it's a print produced in Europe, but likely based on sources from New Spain from the early 16th century. And then we have a very important early music manuscript called the Harpe de Mélodie from 1391, which is essentially an important document for the whole history of music. It features on many covers of books of textbooks about music history. And we have this, as I mentioned, an incredible collection of calligraphy books and are very much interested in the study of handwriting, thanks to our collection. Oh, and here is a brief note about our exhibitions. We have an exhibition space at the Newberry. This is a quick view of a pop-up exhibition that Suzanne just curated. Maybe you want to say a word or two. It just closed.
Just closed last week, but it brought together materials from the 15th century up until now, and we also commissioned a new pop-up kit of the Newberry itself, which meant that people could experience the hands-on nature of putting these things together themselves. So it made people think a lot more about the early history of what a book can be, and the creativity of printing. And in the fall, just coming up in a month, actually, we are opening another exhibition that the Center for Renaissance Studies is curating called Seeing Race Before Race, which aims to illuminate the medieval and early modern foundations of systemic racism and racial thinking in order to better understand how racism and race function today. So we'll have about 40 items from the collection in this show and explore different themes related to performing race, mapping race, and figuring race. There's also a publication connected to this exhibition. So this is a slightly shameless plug for a book that just came out. It's also available online for free. I'm happy to tell you more in the Q&A. So just also some more background about the Newberry before we look at books. We are composed of research centers that
are essentially devoted to helping scholars do their research and to work with faculty and students in various universities around the world. So I'm the director of the Center for Renaissance Studies, and then we have the Darcy McNichol Center for American Indian and Indigenous Studies, Herman Dunlop Smith Center for History of Cartography, and Chicago Studies. And our consortium for Renaissance Studies is comprised of 50 universities around the world. We have funding for programs, we have a connection to the Folger, and we essentially provide benefits for various students and faculty. We host workshops on various different topics like this, medieval manuscripts and early modern books. This has inspired us, I think, to think about doing a workshop about our Islamic materials. We also host courses and symposia and conferences. And right now we're hosting a Spanish paleography course, and next week we'll host a Nahuatl language study course. So that gives you a quick overview, other activities of what we do. And now we will turn to looking at some materials that are live here in front of us. So we will move to a different mode and have a camera and be able to flip through some pages. So I'm going to do a stop share. And just bear with me as I switch devices. Okay, there we go. Testing. Do you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thanks for your patience. Okay, actually, let me, in order to not make you too dizzy, I'll turn the camera off for a second, so we know it works. And we're going to move across the room and start by showing you maybe our most favorite manuscript in the whole collection, but called the Tari Hindi Garbi. And again, apologies for any mispronunciations. We are not experts in the field. So you have Suzanne here, who will be able to turn the pages. And please let me know if, at any time if you have any trouble seeing or hearing us, because this is an unusual format. But essentially what you're looking at is a book from about 1600, though the date is disputed. That is a book in Turkish Arabic, probably produced in Istanbul, perhaps at the Ottoman court in Constantinople, which tells the story of the so-called discovery of the New World. And it is also illuminated with illustrations, as you can see, just beautiful, exquisite ones with gold and other rare pigments. And the author, who until recently we were unsure about, likely was looking at Italian and Spanish sources about the Americas and compiled these sources and copied some of the images to tell the story of the conquest to the Ottoman court. And our edition at the Newberry is one of 19 manuscripts of this book. Many people say, having seen other editions, that ours is the most beautiful in terms of its illustrations and the quality. Here you're seeing maybe my favorite image from the book, which represents the Potosi, which is the mountain in what is now Bolivia, and it was a major mining site. And so you see the mountain here, and you see a river going through, and you see figures at the bottom of the page. One is dark skinned, the other one is white. We're very curious about the meaning of the image. It's based on a Spanish source by Cieza de Leon, which was then copied by an Italian source. And so the image is copied after a woodcut. It's very close to it. I'm sorry we don't have that with us right now, but you have to imagine that the artist copied a woodcut to create this image for this manuscript. Suzanne, would you mind showing a few maps? The book also has some incredible maps of the world and viewed upside down, which was common in Islamic map making at this moment, probably alluding to the position of Mecca. But it's, again, hopefully you can see the detail, including ships. Many of the islands are gold or red. And so these are some of the first images of America in the Ottoman world. We recently held a conference about the book, which was really enlightening, and we brought together scholars from around the world who have worked on it and studied it for the first time, and talked about some of the issues surrounding it, the significance of the maps, and the authorship. We now have a name connected to it, a courtier who was in Constantinople, probably copying maps, or I should say copying sources. We're not quite sure about the date. We thought it was around 1600, but we now think it could be a bit later. And here you're seeing an image of the wak-wak trees. So what's interesting is the book has stories about the New World, but it's also combining those stories with Ottoman legends. And this is a story of the wak-wak trees where women are essentially growing on trees. You can see them hanging from the trees. And so it's a fascinating book, which is combining the Ottoman lore in the past with contemporary events, which are taking place in the Americas at this, actually a few decades later. So combining multiple sources. We know a little bit about the previous owners of this manuscript, thanks to some marginalia and some notes. And what was great is our recent symposium, we had some great, some Arabic readers who could look at them for the first time. And so we're really trying to unpack this book, and we'd like to do a project devoted to it, maybe a book or a digital resource. We find that the book is available online as a digital copy, but it's not a great edition. And we would like to do more with it because it's great for teaching, because it is such a complicated manuscript that is cross-cultural and really significant for the history of Islamic studies. And it's part of our AYR collection, A-Y-E-R. It was given to the library by Edward Ayre, who was a collector of Americana. He was really interested in collecting, documenting the indigenous lives of the Americas. So this is interesting to think that this Ottoman book also appealed to him in the early 20th century as something that the Newberry should have in its collection related to the Americas. I think he was less interested in the fact that it was an Islamic or an Ottoman text. So I'm going to show you right next to it, we have a rare printed edition of the same book. So the book exists currently in, I think we have 19 or 20 manuscript editions, and it wasn't published until 1720, 1730. And we happen to have one of these publications, these early publications, and hopefully you can see in our video that it's pretty much a copy. So the manuscript is copying after prints, and then that is being transferred into print again 100 years later in this incredible printed edition. Suzanne will flip through a few more pages. Also includes some maps, diagrams, cosmographies. pulled out. Pretty incredible. So there's clearly a lot more to be studied about these materials. Our manuscriptary has been translated in a publication, but we feel like we would like to publish it again or work on the translation further, and are thinking about ways to interact and study both the manuscript and the printed edition in more depth. Okay, you get a sense of the connection between the maps and the manuscript and the printed edition. So we'll move on now. I'm going to just, go ahead.
Let's continue with something from the Ayer collection. Just speaking of ways that some of these materials entered the Newberry. And so Ayer was very interested in the classical sources from Ptolemy, and he actually collected a number of different manuscripts that show the constellations and the Almagest. And this one happens to be a 17th century version in Arabic that was made by a famous astronomer as well. And you can see here are they're the scales and the scorpion, but it's very fragile. I'm just going to flip through a little bit, but I think it's a call to a lot of special collections libraries to look a little more carefully at the ways that their collections have been amassed, because there's not always an obvious way that these materials enter the collection, and they're so beautiful and really shine a light on what other materials are out there. I particularly love the addition of these diagrams here. So it's really it's overflowing. Looking at this marginalia and the sides of notes compared to the center, it has an entirely different feel than European marginalia and glosses. And and just from the standpoint of learning about paper, it's really important to think about the burnishing that is done to the tari. We were just looking at and that's not something you see for printed work. So this is all we've been trying to make a clear distinction between the handwritten, hand-drawn texts in the collection, versus that printed example that came after it. Yeah, here's.
Oh wow, those colors are
Gemini.
amazing.
Well, that's the wonder of having it be in a codex. It doesn't see the light as much as a single sheet image. Let's see if I can find a couple more. But no, this was almost a pre-made collection that Ayer purchased because he was also interested in astronomy in this way. But this happened to be, I think it's one of two. Yeah, no, that's the materials have weakened the paper over the years. So there's some loss here, but you can recognize some of the constellations, though there's some that are distinctively changed in this tradition. Oh, here we go. Here's a good one. Wow. So this is definitely a manuscript that needs more work. So should we move on to the other paper?
Move to the Okay, I'm going to actually,
in
in order to not make people dizzy, we'll move over here. Okay, we're on.
Okay, so this is it's absolutely one of my favorite items in the collection, mainly because it started as a puzzle. Because we didn't own anything else like this, which turns out that we've learned since to be something known as a silhouette paper, in which these images and colors and geometric shapes are actually added into the paper
the preparation process folds paper sheets together with colored soaked parchment stencils in an alum bath to affix these shadows on both sides. So there's some repetition. There's a workshop involved in 1580s Constantinople that was churning out paper like this for the export trade. And I will show you some of these pages. You can see there are spaces in a traditional sense where there could have been writing added, but it was also sold for export. So this is something that diplomats to Constantinople started to collect in the 1560s. And this particular example we know is from the 1580s because of watermark evidence, but also through connoisseurial knowledge. The Turkish paper scholar and paper artist Nedim Sönmez had looked at this for us and has confirmed that it's similar to others. And you may not be able to see it, but there is a watermark right here of an angel, and it's actually around 1580s Italian. So what's happening here is this paper started in Italy, was exported to Constantinople, was treated, put into an album, and then was sold back to the export trade. There are a couple of inscriptions that are in Latin. I'll see if I can find them, but this is some, but this could, oh, here we go, here's some. But in several different inks, which I see as reacting to the beauty of the paper around it. I think there's a real call to make it, appreciate the fineness of this paper. And this is an era when people in Europe were collecting multicolored stonework inlays, and I think there may be something of an interest in it for that as well as its novelty. There are tulips, which you see often in, as I've been told, in the context of Constantinople, but also elsewhere. But really, these voids are meant to be filled in. There are some pieces of these as album amicorum, sort of friendship albums or travel journals where people would wander around Europe and have their friends or acquaintances add little bon mots or add drawings or all sorts of things. But this is just a few instances of becoming more of a commonplace book where they're saving someone else's writing, but in the most beautiful way possible. So there are several instances where there are elements that look like script, and this is something we do need help with. I've had people react to it as if it were a pseudoscript that is unintelligible. I've had others wonder if it might be a maker who does not have a very good knowledge of either Arabic or possibly even Persian in some of the cases of the letters. So these are motifs that do appear in other albums. So there's apparently one in Gotha that I've just learned that has similar motifs. I think this one. So looking at the predominance of that, it seems there was an element of language already in the paper. So it's sort of referring to the necessity of filling it out. This is a large album. I think there are some instances where you would get just a few pages of this type of silhouette paper. So this is a rather extreme example where you have this many pages of it, and and so you can see from the spine it says Liber Exoticus, or exotic book. In our cataloging and sitting in the collection, it has fallen victim to a lack of understanding of what it is. Basically, since at least the 19th century, this binding could be fairly late, or at least these front pages look to be. And so it does notice that the inscription does note that this is colorful paper, very varied, but it also implies that the paper is from China and possibly also from Egypt. So there's some definite confusion about the materials, but it draws attention to the need for further research, and it's really one of the treasures of our history of the book collection here. I think it's just stunning, and and the more we can learn about it, the better.
Great.
Yeah,
Thanks, Suzanne.
sure.
Okay, we still have about 2 or 3 more items. It is 12:40. So we'll do another 5-10 minutes of materials and then switch over to Q&A.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about this
Sure,
map
let's
here.
Talk about the map.
I have to step
which
back.
I think we can continue the discussion about language is maybe a good way into the map, because this is the earliest map in Turkish, Ottoman Turkish. It was originally produced in Venice in possibly the late 50s, but it was not printed. It was suppressed. And this impression and all the others that are known are from about 1795. So the fact that the woodblocks were suppressed but not destroyed is interesting in itself. The text is a matter of debate, because some scholars think it may. Basically, there are apparently some idiosyncrasies in how it's written that they think it may not have been a Turkish individual who actually wrote it, but someone who had been learning the language, but it could be but there's a lot of continuing research on that. So for the actual title of it translates to a perfect and complete engraving and description of the whole world, and it is visibly signed by someone named Haj Ahmed, and we don't know enough about him at this point, but if he was someone who was working in Venice and perhaps working with some of the same artists and publishers who were connected to the imagery that went into the Tari, which is something that is possible, it shows a great deal of the erudition and interest in discussions across cultures in terms of mapping and looking at the world. As we can see in the bottom, it's not just a terrestrial map. There's also some nods at the celestial world as well. So looking back to this interest in instrumentation and looking at the constellations. I think there's also a little bit of Albrecht Dürer being cited there, who was pretty well known in
Venice,
in the mid 16th century. So I think some of his celestial charts were simply being cited there.
And it's really hard to document it in a video because it's 10 sheets of paper.
It's enormous.
It's enormous. It's one of our largest maps that have been pasted together. So if you are having trouble taking it in, it's just as difficult to take in really in person, because you move from detail to enormity.
Yeah, we do have excellent new photography of this going up on the Newberry website as part of the map collection of the Navaka maps. Hopefully sometime this summer, maybe in the fall, but then you'll be able to really zoom in and see some of the details. And there are not very many impressions of this map surviving, so I think it's important that it be accessible.
It's the heart form is worth talking about briefly. You can see that the Earth is in the form of a heart. It's called a cordiform map, and a lot of speculation about its meaning. It's a way to show the whole globe in a 2D format, but it also could be allusion to love. I've read so.
Yeah, well, there's the French cartographer Laurent Spiney was the one who printed that first in the 1530s. So we're looking at a lot of European sources being cited here. The depictions of the winds, though, I think are really idiosyncratic in a beautiful way in a map from from Germany, you might have more of a, a figural individual with, puffy cheeks and crazy hair, moving the clouds around, but going sort of simplifying it to be more just the clouds is really a dramatic choice. So there's a lot of interest in making this clearly a map for a different market. I believe when we had the Tari Scholar Symposium, there was a discussion that this might have been intended to praise Suleiman and his connection with the rest of the world. I think there's a sense of privileging that, his knowledge as well. So, and he was certainly as an individual who was interested in cartography and instrumentation. So sundials. So I think that's important to point out. Also the borders. There's a sort of a pomegranate feeling to some of them, but there's some similarity to the paper we were just looking at in the sort of geometric repetitions, but they're really beautiful additions in the woodblock. So for a carving that could have supported thousands of printings, it's really amazing that this has survived even with the suppression. It's just, I guess the size, they must have thought it was too much work to waste it on some level, but it's really, as Leo was saying, that the size leads to all of this amazing detail, and everything on this is hand carved, I think. You would end backwards. So because of the printing process, you would have had to do it in reverse to make it legible.
Just an incredible amount of text, both surrounding the map and then within the map.
But, and also speaking of the love of calligraphy, the title up here is done in an entirely different three-dimensional style, as if the calligraphy is jumping off the page. I think that's particularly lovely with the shadows implied along the accents. It's just stunning.
Great. Okay, I'm going to move to another item. Final, maybe we should move it over here. Switch these out. This is pretty amazing too.
Yeah, so this is a 1680s prayer book. I believe it's in Arabic with Persian comments interlined there in the red. And this is a relatively new acquisition. We do not, unfortunately, have funding to acquire new manuscripts of this nature that are in non-Western languages, but we do occasionally receive them as gifts, and it really enriches the rest of what we have. You can see again the floral borders, a similar the sort of rectangular shape for the text, and then that glorious illumination at the head of the book. It really is a wonderful addition. But it came from an opportunity when a Episcopalian seminary in Illinois was closing and basically downsizing, and they wanted to share their special collections material with a collection that could take care of it, and we benefited from that. So there more research needs to be done on this one. We do not have a manuscript Quran, for instance. That's something that the collection lacks. But we do have early modern printed ones. But this is to give you a sense of, again, the kinds of places that this material has been collected and needs to be better better accessible.
And I'm just putting my hand in here just to show
For
you
scale.
how small this book is. It's really amazing, and the miniature painting here is really incredibly detailed and small. Okay, let's see what time we have here. 12:41.
Do you want to talk about the meta sheet?
Yeah. And then just these last two items we wanted to show you because they're really incredible printed books in Arabic. Some of the first printed books produced in Arabic, and they were made in Italy in the 1580s probably already. They started this printing press in Rome called the Tipografia Orientale. And what's interesting is that it was a Medici cardinal, Ferdinando I, who decided that there should be a printing press in Arabic, essentially for the language and also for the dissemination of the Bible in Arabic. So these are, many of these were printed. This is an illustrated Bible, more or less, with images. And it's really beautiful. These have been studied quite a bit, which is wonderful. There's some great research done on these books. They're pretty common. We have one here, but you can find them in many libraries throughout the world, which indicates that there were a lot of them printed and that this was something that was, disseminated throughout Europe and beyond. So you see the Tipografia Medicea there in Rome.
I think that one has some red printing.
Yeah, and then this one, here, I'll let Suzanne manipulate it since I'm holding the camera, is the alphabet book, essentially also printed by the same press, which is a way to learn Arabic. It's pretty remarkable for this period. Yeah, this actually has two books combined. Another book that is instructional.
Yeah, and you can see those are handwritten.
Marginal,
Well,
or not marginal, but yeah,
accents.
accents added to
It
it.
looks like the printing didn't do a very good job.
Mhm.
And then it's a whole extra step to do the red printing. So here, I thought this was
Yeah.
additional marginalia.
And so this book in our collection does really require some more research by experts in the field.
So I think this is another text. Again, this looks like more of the burnished paper is being used. So this is not printed. I think this whole section is entirely manuscript.
Right.
So there's a French
Yeah,
There's a French
translation.
translations as well as the practice words Arabic. So it's really a rich group of, in process trying to learn.
Yeah.
So
That's probably in a later hand. So just to show you two more books here, combining print and manuscript, and to show you the richness of our collection. Okay, so we will now move back to the computer and set up there and are happy to answer some questions. Okay, testing. Do you hear us now?
I can hear you very well.
It's working?
Yes, we've got 2 questions in the Q&A portal.
Oh, great. Let me check.
Yes, any more questions, lovely people? Post your thoughts. Maybe you've got anything you'd like to share with us. This is a great opportunity. I love the fact that you were able to touch the books.
Yeah. Well, yeah, if you come to the Newberry, you too can touch the books.
Oh my
yeah.
God.
absolutely.
We're open to the public. You just get a reader's card and you can come in
Oh,
and
wow.
look at our materials. We actually don't let people wear gloves.
So it's unsafe for the books.
Yeah.
Anyone in 9th grade and older. Yes.
Mhm. So we have a question from Jessica here. Is there a reason why the margins in the books you showed are so wide as compared to what we might find now? That's a good question. I'll let Suzanne answer as the book historian here.
Well, I guess the simple answer is that there isn't maybe an expectation for marginalia, but that doesn't mean that all books from this period survived with margins that large. In fact, I think we are lucky to have examples that are that wide. Sometimes they would be trimmed down when they were rebound, there's also an interest in saving papers. There could sometimes be. There could be instances where it would be cheaper not to have the margins that wide. But as you can see, there's a real love in the production of, especially the burnished paper we've been looking at. And I think, giving the text proper amount of space, having the the images in the borders be part of the whole is very important. Yeah.
And this is something that's not just in books in Arabic, but it's pretty common in book production from this period.
So it can be a luxury. It can also be practical, assuming there's someone who will want to put a gloss to the text in the middle. Yeah.
So here's a good question. Within your repository, do you possess any illuminated Holy Quran manuscripts in likeness of Princeton University and Yale University?
I think we own. I'm sorry. I think we only have fragments. I don't think we have very much. We certainly don't have a full Quran manuscript, unfortunately.
So we're happy to answer any other questions.
Mhm.
And we're really excited to be able to share our collection with you all. As I mentioned, we're very eager to learn more about our holdings from this part of the world and do more research on them. And I was even thinking like it'd be great to do an exhibition someday and put things on display for people to see. Yeah.
I can see the comments. People are so very grateful for being able to see the manuscripts. I love the maps. The huge map is amazing. It would be great to actually talk to somebody from those many years ago and find out exactly what it was about, what everything meant.
Yeah. Sometimes a map that size is just very expensive to produce. So there could have been some financial element of it as well, and not just. I mean, I think the thought is now that it was controversial, but I think it also would have been controversial to spend that much money on printing a map that large. So the financial factor could have entered into it as well.
Yeah, it's important to recognize that everything we showed you today they're truly luxury items. Maybe the last two books that are printed in Rome are more affordable,
but they still
have images in them,
large books
and also printing in Arabic at this early point, it was a huge task because they're woodcut. So these are luxury items. Okay, we've got a few more questions coming in.
I'll answer how did the library receive these manuscripts? We spoke a little bit about the Edward Ayer collection. He was a collector who was interested in sort of works about the Americas and how Europe interacted with it in the early years. So he basically bought anything that related to what was then thought of as the discovery of America. So a lot of things came through him. And the last book, one of the last books, the devotional manuscripts or the prayer book, that was a gift from a seminary that had to downsize recently.
And then the map forms part of the Novacco collection, which is this enormous map collection, which is mostly cartography from Italy, which was acquired, I believe, from a single collector in the 70s. Yeah.
Yeah. So
it makes
that was a purchase.
Yeah. And unfortunately, as Suzanne mentioned, we're not acquiring actively.
Certainly not buying, but
yeah,
but gifts can be an option.
Yeah.
Let's see. So what is it like to touch and see these beautiful documents? Well, it's a privilege. As we said, if you are in Chicago, we can help you do it yourself. But no, we try to be good caretakers of them. Clean, dry hands, not moving too quickly because there are pigments on the pages. But no, I mean, sort of trying to appreciate what the makers were intending is part of it, and then also makes us want to acquire new languages because we really are not the experts on this yet.
Yeah, a combination of frustration and for not wanting to know more about them, but also just incredible love. I mean, these objects have an aura of their own that's transmitted, and it's pretty powerful to be with them. So,
Yep. Okay. Like any library, we have far too many books to digitize everything. We do have a number of things online, and I mean there is a digital version of the Tari online.
there's actually two digital versions of the Tari online, but I'm embarrassed by them because they're not very good copies, and they have been put online backwards. You need to read it from right to left, but if they've been put online from left to right, so I won't even send you the link. But it is online, and if you're desperate for it, I can follow up. We do hope to do more with the Tari since it's such an important manuscript, and I think making a usable digital edition would be great in the future, one that could be more interactive and show details and connect with other manuscripts and books around the world.
Okay. Yeah, I think someone's asking about whether this is posted on YouTube. I believe so, and recorded. Yes.
Yes, there will be a recording on YouTube in the next few days. We just need to edit it a little bit. But we are live streaming to Facebook. So if anybody wants to view it as soon as possible, you can just go to MACFEST Facebook page and it's there.
Okay.
This is fantastic. So when we started, I said that I would have my own question. I'd like to know a little bit more about both of your work, and I've seen loads of titles in your bios, your publications and exhibitions, and I'm also curious about the journey that you're on both together. Where you are at the moment and how it is, and what are your plans? You've mentioned maybe some kind of exhibition coming up.
Yeah.
Well, we're both art historians, so we generally want more people to look at the art at the Newberry.
Yeah, we're interested in the images mostly, but the text also important. Yeah, we both have PhDs in art history, and mine focused on Italy and the Americas in the 16th century, and I wrote a book called Imagining in the Americas in Medici Florence, which explores how the Medici engaged with the so-called New World, how they represented it in art, and what they collected from the Americas. And since then, I've been thinking more about collecting history and print culture, especially being here. We co-curated an exhibition focused on a very famous print series from the 1580s representing novelty and invention called the Nova Reperta. We have a book as well connected to it and lots of videos online. Unfortunately, the exhibition was up during the pandemic. So,
yeah.
But we welcome inquiries about it and would love to share more. And as I mentioned at the start too, I'm in the midst of preparing this exhibition with a wonderful group of co-curators devoted to representations of race in the pre-modern period, which also has a book. So we keep busy here. I'll let Suzanne explain a little bit more about her work.
Yes, I've been working on unusual printing techniques for a long time. My doctoral work and the exhibition on pop-up books that just closed was part of that ongoing process. I'm very interested in collecting history as well, because a lot of what I've learned about books with moving parts is that you want to know more about who used them and the sort of the traces they've left. And it's a lot easier if you have a book that was given to an individual at age 5 and they kept it into their 90s and then gave it to the Newberry, then you have a much better sense of who took it apart than if it's something from the 15th century. So yeah, looking at users of books is something I'm very interested in. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. You've mentioned that you'd like to know more about the books that you've got, the maps that you have, manuscripts. Is there anything maybe our public could do to help you find out?
Yeah, I think for the book with the silhouette paper, if anyone has any ideas about ways to read the text in it, that's something we'd be interested in, though it seems like it's probably not completely aligned with a particular letter set. But I think I'd be interested to know what they were trying, what they were implying with it. So yeah, I could send someone pictures if they like.
Okay, that would be fantastic. How can people contact you?
Our
Put our
work emails would
in
be
the
fine.
chat.
Okay.
Hi, Katarzyna, Leah, and Suzanne. It's Kesra here. I've joined you. I mean, whatever I've heard so far, it's been absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I was away earlier, but I'm here, and I can see Katarzyna's done a grand job in in hosting you both. So thank you so much for a tremendous session, all the way from Chicago. Really, really appreciate it. And thank you to Katarzyna for hosting it beautifully, as always. And of course, all the attendees, 47 of them. Can you imagine they're given their time, whether it's afternoon or evening? They've not had their dinner here. It's 7 o'clock here at night time. So it shows it's been a tremendous. And so thank you to everybody. And Katarzyna, if you don't mind putting up the slide for the next event. And as you can see in the chat and here, we have a wonderful session coming up, Islam in China, on Sunday with Dr. Salah. So please do join us. I think it's time to call it a day. So Katarzyna, if you want to say goodbye to Leah and Suzanne again.
Thank you again. It was lovely presentation. And again, I've got to say this, I love the fact that you could touch the books, honestly. Because we had the previous event from a different library from Dubai, and the books were contained in, behind the glass in the boxes. And yes, and this just feels amazing.
Yeah, we're very lucky. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, we look forward to hearing from you. Stay well.
Thank you so much once again, and good afternoon to you, and good evening to our European attendees. Okay, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.